when David Linton buried his wife. He thought it was the end of his nightmares. Her illness had dragged on for months. Long nights, hospital corridors, and the sterile smell of antiseptic. When the end came, it was merciful. The funeral was quiet, attended by a few friends who said all the wrong comforting things. Time heals, they told him. But it didn't. Every night, David dreamt of her. Not as she had been before, but as she looked in the coffin, pale, still, her lips stitched into silence. He visited her grave every evening after work, bringing white lilies and sitting by her headstone until dusk. The cemetery was small, tucked behind an old church at the edge of the village. The caretaker, an elderly man named Harris, always nodded politely but kept his distance. On the 12th evening, something changed. When David arrived, he noticed the soil beside his wife's grave was disturbed, dark, damp, and freshly turned. At first, he thought the caretaker must have been preparing a new plot. But Way leaned closer to read the marker, his stomach twisted. The wooden board stuck in the ground bore his own name. David Linton, 1983 to 2025. He stared for a long time, frozen in disbelief. The date of death was blank. "Harris," he called, his voice cracking. "Harris, what is this?" The caretaker appeared from behind a row of yews, shovel in hand. His face went pale when he saw what David was pointing at. "God above," Harris muttered. "I didn't dig that." David forced a shaky laugh. "Some sick joke, then?" Harris shook his head. "There's no new orders here. Haven't had one in weeks." "I'd never." He stopped suddenly, frowning. "When did you say you last came by?" "Yesterday," David said. Harris knelt, running his fingers through the soil. "This was done last night. Look, fresh earth. Someone's been digging." "Digging my grave?" Harris didn't answer. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying a faint smell of damp and decay. "I'll have to report it," Harris said finally. "But maybe stay away for a few days, eh? Just till we sort this out." David nodded, though the thought of staying away from his wife's resting place felt wrong. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept seeing the dirt, freshly turned, the marker with his name. It had been written neatly, not like a prank, more like an official record. At 3:02 a.m., his phone rang. No caller ID. He answered, half asleep. "Hello." A whisper came through the static. "They've made room for you." David bolted upright. "Who is this?" No reply, just a faint sound like someone shoveling dirt. He hung up and sat in silence, heart racing. It had to be a cruel joke. Someone from the village, maybe, but how would they know his number? He didn't sleep again that night. The next day, he went back. Harris wasn't there. The gate was unlocked. The caretaker's shed empty. David walked to the graveyard center, half hoping he'd imagined it. But the grave was still there, deeper now. The soil piled higher, the marker clearer. His name was no longer written in marker pen. It had been carved into a proper wooden cross. And now, the date was complete. David Linton, 1983 to 2025. Date of death, October 6th. Today's date. David stumbled back, nearly tripping over a root. He felt sick. No, this isn't real. Behind him, something creaked. He turned and saw his wife's headstone. The photograph on it, the one he'd placed himself, had changed. Her smile was gone. In its place was an image of her looking straight ahead, eyes open and lifeless, like she'd been waiting. And beneath the photo, new words had appeared, carved roughly into marble. Not long now. He ran, out through the gates, across the lane, heart hammering in his chest. By the time he reached home, his hands were trembling so badly, he dropped his keys twice before getting the door open. Inside, everything felt colder. The air smelled faintly of wet earth. He turned on the lights and froze. On the hallway floor, someone had left a trail of muddy footprints. Small, bare ones, leading from the door to the bedroom. "Sarah?" he whispered before catching himself. He followed the prints slowly, dread coiling tighter with each step. The bedroom door was open. The bed, untouched since she died, now had something lying on it. A shape beneath the duvet. His knees, almost gave way. Please, no. He reached out with shaking hands and pulled the blanket back. The bed was empty, but the pillow was damp, pressed with a faint imprint of a head. And on the pillowcase, written in mud, were 3 words. See you soon. David didn't go to work that day. He sat in his car outside the church, staring at the graveyard gates, trying to summon the courage to go back. He needed to know who had done this, who had dug that hole, who had been in his house. By evening, the sky had turned gray. Rain fell in slow, cold drops. He walked through the gates, torch in hand. The cemetery was silent, except for the sound of rain on stone. When he reached the grave, his stomach twisted. The hole was now fully open, 6 feet deep, and lying at the bottom was a coffin. His coffin. The brass plate gleamed faintly in the torchlight. David Linton. He couldn't breathe. He stumbled back, clutching the nearest headstone for balance. Something moved in the shadows. "Who's there?" he shouted. A figure stood at the far end of the row. A woman, her hair soaked, her dress clinging to her frame. "Sarah?" She tilted her head. Water dripped from her fingers. "Why are you here?" he whispered. Her voice was soft, but he heard it clearly. "Because you promised." David shook his head. "I didn't. You said you wouldn't leave me." Her eyes gleamed faintly in the dark. "So I waited, and now..." She pointed to the open grave. "It's your turn." He ran again, slipping on the wet grass, but the gate was further than it should have been. Every step felt slower, heavier, as though something was pulling him back. He turned once more. She was closer now, pale, silent, her dress stained with earth. The rain grew louder, drowning his heartbeat. Then, from the direction of the grave, he heard something, the dull sound of wood creaking. He turned his torch toward it. The coffin lid was open, and inside he saw himself, lying there, eyes closed, hands folded neatly across his chest. He dropped the torch. The light spun wildly, throwing warped shadows across the stones. When he looked up again, Sarah was gone. The grave was empty. Morning came. The vicar found the caretaker, Harris, sitting by the gate, pale and shaking. "There's something wrong in there," the old man muttered. "Something that shouldn't be." When the police arrived, they found a single grave freshly filled. It bore the name David Linton. No one knew who had buried him, or when, but when they exhumed it 3 days later, the coffin was empty. A month passed. The cemetery was quiet again. Then, one foggy evening, a young couple visiting a relative's grave noticed something strange. 2 headstones side by side, Sarah Linton and David Linton. Their dates identical. The soil in front of them was freshly disturbed, as though someone had just been buried there again. The girl took a step closer, frowning. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. The boy listened. From somewhere deep below, beneath the ground, came a soft tapping. 3 knocks, then silence. They never came back to that cemetery. But sometimes, the caretaker swears he still hears voices after dark, a man and a woman, whispering softly to each other from beneath the soil. And every few months, without fail, the grave beside theirs looks freshly dug again, with someone else's name on it.